Most agents compete on the same promises: professional photography, strong marketing, great communication. But those things are not what make an agent exceptional. They're simply what every seller should be able to expect: our reasonable service. So what if the reason your home isn't selling has nothing to do with how many platforms your listing appears on, and everything to do with whether anyone ever understood why someone would choose your home over every other option? Earn trust, raise stakes. It took me years to understand that taking an overpriced listing does not actually help the seller. It only delays the disappointment. I've had to tell sellers to take their home off the market entirely rather than watch it sit for months with a strategy that was broken from the very beginning. I don't want to win a listing with a number. I want to create the strongest possible path to a sale. So instead of telling you I offer professional photos and strong marketing, I'm going to show you what actually makes the difference between a home that sits and a home that sells. The strategy before it ever goes live, the honest conversation about pricing, the positioning that connects with the right person, and the truth sellers deserve to hear before they make expensive mistakes. Because selling a home is rarely just about the property. It's about the people, the timing, the emotions, and the life connected to the move. Most agents celebrate getting the listing. Sign in the yard, contract signed, commission secured. But what if winning that listing at a number the market will never support is actually the worst thing that could happen to a seller? It took me years in real estate to fully understand something that changed how I do this work. Early in my career, I thought getting the listing was the win. The sign in the yard, the signed contract, that felt like the finish line. But experience taught me the goal was never to get the listing. The goal is to sell the home. If I know a home is priced at a level the market is not likely to support, I don't want to tell a seller what they want to hear just so I can put my sign in the yard. That may feel good for a minute, but eventually someone has to become the bearer of disappointment. And I don't want to be that person for my sellers. I don't want them to feel like the market rejected their home when the real problem was the strategy from the very beginning. I would rather have an honest, respectful, and sometimes difficult conversation up front than spend months explaining why the home is still sitting. I've done that and it does not feel good. Here's what that overpriced listing actually cost a seller. 3 months on the market, 2 price reductions, growing frustration, buyers who start to assume something must be wrong with the property because it's been sitting so long, and eventually a sale below where it should have started. Once a home has been on the market too long, price reductions without a new strategy just make the same listing less expensive. They don't fix the positioning problem underneath. That's why the way you evaluate an agent should never be the highest suggested list price. It should be whether they can defend the recommendation with real data and be honest about the risk. This doesn't mean pricing is an exact science or that I believe I'm always right by any means. It means I should be able to explain the data, defend my recommendation, and tell you the truth about what could go wrong. I can respect how much a home means to a seller without pretending the market will assign the same emotional value to it. Pricing is where most of the damage happens before a home ever goes live. But price is only half the story. A home priced perfectly can still sit for months if the wrong people are the only ones who ever see it. And that mistake is quietly costing sellers just as much as a bad number. That's the part almost no one talks about. Most people assume more exposure automatically means better result. More photos, more platforms, more showings, but views are not the same thing as qualified interest. And a beautiful home marketed to the wrong person can sit just as long as one with real problems. Real estate marketing often focuses too much on the property and not enough on the person most likely to buy it. That's the mistake. The goal is not to make a home appeal to everyone. The goal is to make it connect with the right person. A home can be beautiful and still be marketed incorrectly. So before a listing ever goes live, I'm asking the questions that reveal whether there's a real strategy behind it. Who's most likely to buy this home? What will make that person stop scrolling? Is this property best positioned as a home, an investment, an escape, a gathering place, or just a lifestyle change? Sometimes the property is not the problem at all. The presentation, the positioning, the pricing, or the audience is the problem. The first few seconds online matter. care. The order of the photos matters. The first photo does not always need to be the front of the house. And here's something sellers rarely expect. The feature you love most may not be the feature that attracts your buyer. The strongest selling point is often something hidden in plain sight, something you've stopped noticing because you live there every day. When the marketing speaks to no one specifically, qualified buyers never find it. It disappears into the noise and a beautiful home gets scrolled past. So before you list, ask your agent questions that matter. Who's most likely to buy my home? What will make them stop scrolling? What does this home offer that can't be understood from the number of bedrooms and bathrooms? I don't simply market homes. I market the reason someone would choose that particular home over every other option available. Targeted marketing beats broad marketing every time. And the right positioning can make a home stand out in a crowded market without spending a single dollar more. Knowing the right person and the right positioning is a huge part of the work, but most of that work happens where sellers never see it. And when a listing isn't performing, the difference between an agent who solves it and one who simply waits is the difference between selling your home and watching it sit. Right now, most homes on the market are being handled by someone doing the passive version. Most sellers assume an agent's job is to take photos, post the listing, and wait for offers. But listing a property is not a passive job, at least not when someone is actually paying attention to what the market is telling them. When a home isn't selling, the question isn't, why aren't buyers calling? It's, what is the market telling us that we're refusing to hear? I don't believe in putting a home online, leaving it there indefinitely, and calling that a marketing plan. If something is not working, I want to understand why. I want to interpret what the market is telling us and decide on a strategy we haven't considered yet. And there's a whole layer of work behind that most sellers never see. What I'm thinking when I first walk through the property, what I notice immediately, what I would change, what I would leave alone, and what I would highlight, what I tell sellers not to spend money on, what I'm seeing in the competing listings down the street. Then there's the harder part, when things aren't moving. What do I do when we have showings but no offers? What do I do when there are no showings at all? These are two completely different problems, and they point to two completely different fixes. When buyers are viewing the home but not making offers, the issue is usually price or condition. When buyers aren't viewing at all, the issue is positioning, presentation, or access. Reading that correctly is the whole job. And through all of it, sellers should know what's happening. When buyers are saying what the market is doing and what we may need to change, they should never feel forgotten after the listing goes live or feel like they have to chase me down for information. So before you list, ask your agent directly, what will you do if we have showings but no offers? What will you do if we have no showings? How will you diagnose whether the issue is price, presentation, or positioning? I want my sellers to feel like someone is paying attention. That's the standard you deserve to hold any agent to. Active problem solving, not passive waiting. Everything so far has been about strategy and numbers, but the numbers are never the whole story. Behind every listing is a person, and sometimes what they're really walking through has almost nothing to do with the sale. This is the part of the work that reminds me how much weight a single decision can carry. From the outside, every listing looks the same. Contract, photos, closing date. But the story behind the move is never just logistics. Sometimes a person is selling because they're excited about a new beginning. Sometimes it's because they have no choice. I once helped an elderly woman sell her home after her husband had passed away. Her children lived about 4 hours away and wanted her to move closer so they could help care for her so she wouldn't be alone. She was looking forward to being with her family, but she did not want to leave her home. That home held years of memories and love. It held the life she and her husband had built together. She truly loved the Gulf Coast, and selling meant leaving behind not only a house, but a place and a life that had meant so much to her. There was hope in what was ahead of her, but there was also real sadness in what she was leaving. That's the kind of situation that reminds me how much weight a real estate transaction can carry. From the outside, it may look like a listing, a contract, and a closing date. To the person living through it, it may feel like closing an entire chapter of their life. Sometimes a move happens because of a job, retirement, health, as in my case, financial pressure, divorce, or the death of someone they love. Sometimes a seller is ready to move, and sometimes they're being asked to leave a home they never wanted to leave. A home does not have to be someone's forever home to have been deeply important. Sometimes a home carried someone through a particular season. Sometimes it held a marriage, raised a family, family, provided safety, created community, or became the place where someone finally healed. Leaving a home you love does not always mean you're making the wrong decision. Sometimes you're leaving something beautiful because there's another life you know you're supposed to step into. That's why I care about the numbers, but I also care just as deeply about the story behind the move, because selling a home is not always a celebration. So the real question, when you're choosing who to walk through this with, is simple. Do you want an agent who sees this as a transaction, or do you want someone who understands the emotional weight of what you're carrying? Most agents talk about helping people create the life they love as if it were a tagline. For me, it's not a tagline. It's my story. It's why I chose that for a tagline. I know what it feels like to relocate because you need to heal. I know what it feels like to find a home you love while knowing it isn't your final destination. And I know what it feels like to finally step into the life you've been longing for. When my husband Philip and I relocated to the Gulf Coast, we knew our ultimate goal was to live on the island in Orange Beach, but that didn't happen right away. We started in Foley and found a beautiful new construction home that we truly loved. That home was not a mistake. It was a great home and it became an important part of our story. But we kept looking in Orange Beach because something in us still knew where we ultimately wanted to be. And when we finally found the house that allowed us to make that transition, it felt like coming home to something we had longed for. We originally relocated to the Gulf Coast because I needed to heal. And we ended up creating a life here that was more beautiful than anything we had ever imagined or dreamed of. That is what fuels me in my real estate career. I know the stakes can be incredibly high when someone is moving because they were very high for us. Sometimes a move is not just about buying or selling a property. It's about health, family, survival, freedom, restoration, retirement, a new beginning, or a dream someone has carried for years. Sometimes people know exactly where they want to end up. They need help navigating the steps between where they are and where they want to be. That's the part I want to help people walk through, both sides of it. I want to help them make wise financial decisions while also understanding the emotional weight of what they're doing. I want sellers to feel confident about what they're leaving, and I want buyers to feel hopeful about where they're going. The transaction matters, but the life attached to it matters so much more. Helping people create a life they love is not simply a tagline to me. It's part of my own story. If you're thinking about selling your home and want someone who understands both the strategy and the story behind the move, send me a DM. My social links are in the description. I'd be so happy to talk through your situation and help you understand the right next step.